This RealAg Radio podcast is brought to you by Authority 480 herbicide from FMC. Authority 480 herbicide provides extended activity on the toughest weeds like kochia, wild buckwheat, cleavers, Russian thistle, and many more. See your local retailer today for more information.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Wednesday midweek edition of the show. Thanks so much for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Also a big shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. Well, it is Wednesday, midweek already, and this has been, I'm a traveling Woolbury this week. Yes, I am all over the place. I was in Cambridge, Ontario yesterday speaking to a CCAN soybean dealer meeting. It was fantastic. I've spoken to that group on several occasions. It's always really cool to go back to the same group year over year because we can talk about what's changed since we last talked and the why of it. It was really fantastic. I got a chance to talk about the Canadian political scene, what's happening in ag policy, a little bit about the U.S. election, and we also talked about some of our new Canadian farmer sentiment data that really unveils a bunch of really, really interesting questions that I have mainly for sure about the 2024 crop that is ahead and how farmers are feeling right now about what is in front of them, especially from a financial perspective. And we even compared that to some of the U.S. data with the Purdue Ag Barometer as well. So speaking of the Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index, today on the show we're going to have Justin Funk of RealAgristudies. He's going to be here to talk with me about some of the highlights of this month's January's findings. We're already into February. And we're also going to hear today from Lance Zimmerman. Now, he is the head beef analyst with Rabobank, and I had a chance to talk to him last week at the CattleCon convention in Orlando, Florida. We're going to talk about what we need to do to really build some resiliency in this beef supply chain and mainly focused around the idea of rebuilding the cow herd, provided that Mother Nature cooperates with some rain to build some grass out there. Oh, another treat is yesterday when I was at that CCAN meeting, I had a chance to talk to one of the other keynote speakers. You know him very, very well. It is Machinery Pete. Yes, Greg Peterson will be with us here today as well to talk about some of the used machinery prices out there. And hey, with the concern about farm profitability, are we starting to see a little bit of a rollover, a pullback in some of those used equipment prices? And if so, in what types? We'll also have some time today for the top ag news stories of the day. If you have any feedback on today's show, you can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also call us on the RealAg listener line. It is 855-776-6147. Or, of course, you can find us across all the social media platforms. Right now I'm sitting in an airport in Calgary. Flew from Toronto late last night, headed to Brandon to speak at the Manitoba Beef Producer meeting on tomorrow night, Thursday. So looking forward to that. And that's one of the cool things about this job at this time of the year, getting out to so many different meetings and speaking to groups, sometimes doing this show live with an audience, is you get all the different perspectives and what's on people's minds, right? And some great questions from the crowd yesterday, expecting the same thing in the Manitoba Beef Producer meeting. And many of the questions will be the same, but maybe some of the answers will be slightly different because the beef producers thinking about things a little bit differently than maybe somebody that's in the soybean or the corn industry, right? From especially on different sides of the country. So looking forward to being with Manitoba Beef Producers on Thursday evening in Brandon, Manitoba. Yes, weather nicer in Toronto than it is in Calgary. If you're wanting a weather update, I will definitely pass that on. Snowy, blowy, and kind of chilly here in Calgary compared to what it was yesterday in Ontario. We'll see what it's like in Brandon. I think it's a bit mild there as well. So I'll take the mild weather. As you know, I have an allergy to winter. When we come back on RealAg Radio, we are going to hear from Machinery Pete. Let's find out what's going on in the used equipment market. We'll do that when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Today's show is brought to you by Alltech. Encourage you to go to alltech.com. Also joining us right now, it is Martha Baker, and she is the Alltech sales manager. Now, Eglin, that's the product?
So Eglin is a new product. It is a blend of essential oils, so it's an all-natural product, non-antibiotic, non-synthetic product. And what it does is on a dairy side, it increases fat protein corrected milk flow by 2 to 4 pounds, 1 to 2 kilos, with like 99% repeatability. On the beef side, what we see is an improvement in feed efficiency, upwards of 7%. We see an increase in ADG and fewer days on feed.
Feed additive then, or how are we incorporating it into the to the animal?
Yeah, it is a feed additive. The feed rate's only 1 gram per head on a dairy side, and 200 milligrams per kilo of body weight on the beef side.
You buy one skin of that stuff, and it's lasting a long time.
It does. It does absolutely.
Through a growing storm of kosher, cleavers, chickweed, and more, there's a clear path. Introducing Oxbow, a versatile cereal broadleaf herbicide that gets the job done. Powered by Duplisan technology, Oxbow is your workhorse on resistant kochia and other tough weeds. With flexibility in timing, rates, and recropping options, your path is clear. Find your way on the path of least resistance at newfarm.ca/Oxbow.
When I've been talking to audiences this winter, and we're talking about farm profitability, a lot of farmers are saying, well, yeah, Shaun, look, like commodity market has rolled over somewhat. We've seen input prices come down, but they haven't come down enough. And equipment is still quite high. I heard this a couple times yesterday. Well, we're going to talk to the expert when it comes to used machinery prices. But first, I want to tell you about Co-op. Co-op knows your community because we live here too. Our teams are your trusted partners with a range of expertise to help support your entire farm operation. Co-op, here for your farm, here for your family. Learn more at co-op.crs/farm. Let's hear from the man, the myth, the legend. It is Machinery Pete. Greg, it's great to see you.
Yeah, you too, Shaun. Enjoyed your presentation. Fantastic as always, and always great fun to come back up north of the border.
Okay, you were, of course, today talking about what's happening in the machinery market. We're clearly seeing some tightening of margins on the farm, some dipping even into the red in cases. How is all this having an impact on what's happening in the machinery market?
Well, it's a great question, Shaun. I mean, 34 plus years I've been tracking this stuff every day. I sort of look at it like sentiment doesn't matter. It's just, hey, put this asset up for sale today in Ontario or Minnesota or Texas, and what it'll bring, and then how does that compare? So I think definitely some changes. We're beginning tilt away from a seller's market, probably the strongest seller's market I've ever seen extended for 3+ years, towards more of a buyer's market based on supply has changed on the dealer side, and then also changing realities with, like you said, the profitability for Joe Farmer.
Are we seeing the volume of transactions slow down? Because that's something we talk a lot about in the real estate market or the land market is like, values are still pretty high, but we've seen a slow down. We're getting less liquid. Is that happening in machinery?
Yeah, I think you could probably make the argument. I mean, we do track raw number of auctions, and I would say that end of 23 was extremely busy. I think a lot of farmers may be pushing forward a little retirement or downsizing to capture the year-end buying heat, so we definitely saw that. Even in January is always slow. But, it's just I haven't noticed a drastic drop-off in the number of machinery sales. But then by the same token, I haven't noticed a huge increase either. So,
now all machinery is not created equal. There is differences. When AEM reports their numbers on new machinery sales, they've got it broken down by horsepower on tractors and combines and things like that. When you look at the used market, where are you seeing strength versus where are you seeing weakness from a machinery type standpoint?
Well, the tractor market as a whole has been exceedingly strong, stronger than you would have thought structurally, given the increase on the dealer used lots. But it's just been, good condition used tractors have been fantastic, selling very well. I think because of what's happening on the new side, the multiple price increases, aggressive price increases, that always pulls up on the value of good used. If you drift into pre-def, that thing has almost become unglued, how just unhinged the buyer demand. It's leached over from the tractor market into the combine market. I never thought I'd be writing columns about trends with pre-def combines, but that became a thing last year. I think what's interesting to me is now if we get on the dealer side of things, they're very conscious of what happened a decade ago when used values fell like a rock in end of 13, 14, 15. We're talking 20 to 25% year-over-year drop in value. And everyone tends to think the used values will fall the same this time. But there's structural differences right now. One is the number of dealers versus 10 years ago. The consolidation has been breathtaking. So now you don't have a 2 to 6 store dealership. You got a 30 to 70 plus location, and they're capitalized. That's a whole different animal. And so we saw them get very aggressive and push excess late model used onto the auction market proactively last summer, July and August with combines. So like on a John Deere S780, we saw a 400% increase in the number sold at auction. Now, Econ 101, you would say, oh my God, the auction, it must have felt like a rock. But they only dipped 15.5%. And where we see the bigger drop is the 6 to 10-year-old, the S600, and the same with other color lines in that age range. So I think they're becoming more selective buying opportunities, plugging into age-wise, what you're looking at.
One of the other things I wonder about, too, is we've continued to see some machines get larger and larger and larger, and I've always wondered, where does some of these very large combines or seed drills, where do they go in the used market? Because if I'm a really large farmer looking for that class of combine or, that 60, 80-foot drill, I'm going to buy new. I don't, unless there's a really deep discount on the used. Is the size being any sort of a factor? Are you seeing any differences?
Yeah, you just identified a truth, a reality of the farm equipment market. Yeah, bigger is better has a boomerang effect. So where's not just the second buyer, where's the third buyer, where's the fourth buyer? So now we're seeing things, if you look for sale, machinerybeat.com, all of a sudden the number of X9s on the market. Not every farmer needs an X9 combine. So when we see the flip of it, and if I had a nickel for every time someone would say, gosh, Pete, I wish they would just make, like the old days, I wish they'd make smaller equipment that I need. So then we see things like a farmer in South Dakota who lists 9570, an 09 model, for sale with us with 0 hours on it. And I was like, oh my God, I need the rest of the story. What's the scoop here? So I called the guy up. He's a seed dealer, and he said, well, my dad bought this thing, and then he changed our operation back in the day, went to no-till, just didn't use it, had beans custom done. So he said, Pete, am I nuts to ask $249.9 for this 9570? And I said, that's what I'd ask. Put the story out there. He had 2 full price offers in 2 days. Wow. Not for a collector. They went to farm with it. Brand new, a smaller combine, like new, whatever. So that's 15 years old. But we see the same, you'll see strength with 6-row planters if it's right. It's just we're splitting based on size. Yep. And that does create a valid question on what's a 4-year-old massive, biggest combine worth, or the highest horse tractor. And that's why I enjoy being on the sideline reporting on it day by day, and I can bring you the story. But hopefully we try and help people, make that good decision so they know, if it dropped, did it drop 20%? Did it drop 10%? And just so you know before you write the check.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's a lot of things where I say the same thing. I like to talk about it, I like to report on it. I'm glad I'm not having to write the check for it. That's for sure. You mentioned the dealer, and there's less of them. We've seen a lot of consolidation in the dealer network. Any comments on the prognosis for them, like the financial health, or is it a sector that feels like they've steered through, pandemic, post-pandemic well, or are they kind of hurting right now and just trying to figure out how they keep some margin?
Well, I think the sector, obviously challenges are challenges, and it's tough, and particularly when you compare to, 1, 2, 3, 4 good years, that when the market changes, it's no fun. But I think the whole reasoning behind the shift was to give a stronger financial base to these owner groups to weather these ups and downs and navigate through them differently. So to me, that change of much fewer larger dealers combined with the sea change we've seen with the whole online bidding space coming out of the pandemic, those are two factors working against what we saw a decade ago, that 20 to 25% across the board drop in used values. And the online auction thing is funny because, I mean, we've had online bidding for, 15 plus years. But all I can tell you, Shaun, is that when the pandemic started March of 2020, and I do my gig, I'm collecting prices, and prices went up within 10 days significantly. And there was no reason for it other than we're humans, and now no one's looking over my shoulder, and I'm going to hit the frickin' bid button one more time. Excuse my French. So then when you interjected money into the system, it's just to the point now where it's apples and oranges. So it used to be if you had an auction, you'd advertise the event. Hey, I have an auction March 2nd. I got some nice stuff. Now you're target marketing every piece on your auction, and people are finding it through sites like ours and others where they, I'm looking for an HX15 batwing mower, and I don't care where it is. I just want the nicest one. Boom, there it is. Click the button, it's yours. That, to me, yanked the whole farm equipment space forward 7 to 10 years in one swoop. So I think structurally the system, now this is speaking from a manufacturer angle, the system functions better, more smoothly, faster, maybe mimicking the used automobile sector. If you're a farmer, the danger is assuming that it'll be just like it was 10 years ago, because times are tougher. Dealers always pile. That's a dangerous assumption, because again, we saw 400% increase in S780 sold at auction in 23, and they only dropped 15.5%, and that's because buyers from all over the world are looking at these things, and that's getting that 1, 2, 3, 4 extra bids. Now they're dropping, but. So those are some of the things I'm keeping my eye on.
Yeah. Before we wrap up here, is there anything else that you're kind of a signal you're sort of paying attention to here for 24 that's going to be an indication on which way we kind of head here?
Well, it's sort of the old money factor. I don't know how you verify it, but, the Wall Street and those folks keep asking me about interest rates and stuff. And you boil this down, a lot of equipment has been bought with, cash and land. So that's truth. And now the question is, how do we crack that nut anecdotally to when that changes? But, when and if that does, then it's apples and oranges. Then you've got a different thing we're reporting on. So that's kind of what I'm watching.
Well, it's great to catch up with you. I really appreciate it. And everybody should go to machinerypete.com. And what do you got go on there? All the listings and the values, the auctions coming up. Give us if somebody hasn't been there before, give us a bit of a shout out here. Yeah,
we just want to let you type in, what you want, whatever make and model, and then show you the ones dealers have, the ones that are coming up at auction. We've got all our auction prices free there, machinerypete.com. So again, really want you to look at that beforehand, folks, before you buy, sell, or trade, so you know the hard cash, what stuff is going for. And then just our TV show and our commentary and all that stuff. That's our hub, machinerypete.com.
Great stuff. Greg, it was great to see you again.
Always great to catch up with you, Shaun.
That was Machinery Pete of Machinery Pete TV and machinerypete.com. One of my big takeaways there from talking to Greg is if you are going to be buying something in the used market, especially as we start to see some potential price drops, pay attention, right? Do your research. When the market was going straight up, you just want to get your hands on it. Now, I don't know. You need to get your hands on it because you need it for the farm, but make sure you do your research from a pricing perspective. And obviously machinerypete.com is one of the places to do that. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we've got Justin Funk of RealAgristudies. We're talking about what you think out there in farm country about your profitability right now and in the next 12 months. And I'll give you a bit of a sneak peek. You're not very positive. We'll talk about that when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio.
Co-op knows your community because we live here too. Our teams are your trusted partners with a range of expertise to help support your entire farm operation. And we're giving back. In the past 5 years, Co-op has invested over $1.1 billion in the prairies, through building, upgrading, and expanding local facilities. And we've returned over $1.17 billion to co-op members in the prairies. Co-op, we're all building something for the future. Here for your farm, here for your family. Learn more at coop.crs/farm.
Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcast. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School, brought to you by BSF Canada.
There's power, and then there's superpower. Advancing the unstoppable superpower of pre-seed from New Farm. Take control. Eliminate weed competition and start clean in spring. Manage weeds early in canola, cereals, and pulses. Conquer, Goldwing, Thunderhawk, and Blackhawk EVO. Convenient formulations and multiple modes of action. Add more power to glyphosate, more benefits to your burn down. Go to newfarm.ca/burndown.
The Canadian Crops Convention is headed to Winnipeg this year. It's happening March 5th through the 7th. This year's theme is Growing Opportunities and includes a stellar lineup of knowledgeable speakers and great networking opportunities. Check out what the Canola Council of Canada and the Canadian Grains Council have planned, and you can register by going to CanadianCrops.ca. Okay, let's jump into how farmers are feeling right now about what's happening out there in the marketplace and how that all relates back to farm profitability. We're getting a little bit closer to planting time. A lot of people on ranches are mid-calving or about to begin. So there's lots happening and lots of thinking happening. Let's bring in Justin Funk of RealAgristudies. Hey, Justin, how's it going?
Hey, pretty good, Shaun. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing really good. So before we get to the results, let's quickly review how we put together these numbers.
So starting in September of 2022, we launched a survey that was conducted every 2 months to take the farmer's pulse on a number of issues, like how they feel about their farm's financial performance, both now and in the future, optimism towards the economy and the industry, grain markets, and state of mental health. And so we've been measuring these results over that time frame. And we essentially present our panelists with some options. Are you feeling better or are you feeling worse? And we subtract one from the other to get an index, add it to 100. And anything that goes above this 100 line, a neutral line, is a positive sentiment. Anything below is a negative sentiment. And so we've been tracking the degree to which those sentiments have changed over the course of the year. So now we're in January of 24. We've decided to do this now every quarter as opposed to every other month. So January 24 is the first iteration of our quarterly sentiment index.
Yeah, as we look at current farm financial performance and future farm financial performance, so current is right now, future is 12 months from now, farmers feeling somewhat negative about their farm profitability.
They are, and it's been on a downward trend pretty much since, a year ago right now. We were in positive territory on the current financial index in January of 23, approaching 120 points, which is pretty positive. Now we're down to 86, so below the neutral line, and the trend continues to go down. And we see the same sort of thing, not quite to the same degree with the future. Future has always been negative, and I think our hypothesis here is it always will be, but now we measure the degree of negativity, and it really dropped. It went from 89 in October of 23 down to 67. So farmers are feeling pretty concerned about the future of their farm's financial situation.
Yeah, commodity prices have come down. Input prices have not fallen enough in farmers' opinions, and machinery prices have been somewhat sticky, although we heard from Machinery Pete a little bit earlier here in the show, and he talked about how those are starting to fall, coming down at least a little bit in some of the categories. So where we really see some negativity coming through, we asked about the optimism towards the Canadian ag economy in the next 12 months, as well as the future of the Canadian ag industry, which looks out 5 years, both even lower. What do you make of this? Some of these levels that we're looking at 44 and 56.
Well, I think people are concerned. You take a look at how these numbers have jumped around. At one point, the Ag Economy Index was up to 97, so it was approaching that neutral. And then it rebounded a little bit in July, and then again in October, it remained constant, but it just really fell off here in January. And I imagine there's a number of factors related to that: commodity markets, weather. I think this is illustrating the level of farmers' concern. And that's in the short term. In the long term, so the 5-year, we didn't see as significant a drop, but still the trend is showing that it has generally been going down since a year ago right now.
Yeah, look, when we had open-ended responses, Justin, and what really, and I haven't categorized the open-ended responses, but a significant amount of them, farmers mentioning they feel negative right now, and they bring up the carbon tax. That's definitely something, whether that's forcing them into the red or not, like as a reality, it's definitely the perception out there. Farmers are very negative towards that policy.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. Okay. How does this compare to what we're seeing south of the border with the Purdue CME Ag Barometer? Because we're asking a lot of the same questions in the same way, so it's a great comparison. What are we seeing?
Yeah, so now that we've had a longer window to look at the results, I think we have a more fair comparison of what we see happening with the Purdue CME Ag Economy Barometer. They just released their latest results here the other day, and they're seeing the same sort of thing that we are. Farmer sentiment is trending downwards, and one of the differences, though, and I'm not quite sure what accounts for it, is when you look at the confidence in making farm investments, so that would be buying land, machinery, things of that nature. We've been negative in the 50s, but it's remained relatively consistent despite, even during that time frame, several interest rate hikes and now a plateau, it seems. Their confidence in making farm investment index is significantly lower than ours for whatever reason.
Yeah. What's also interesting here, if we look at current and future farm financial performance, is one person said to me, well, hey, this is the time of the year. Farmers are going to be negative this time of the year. This is exactly the opposite of what we saw last year. Last year, January of 23, farmers were feeling much better about their financial performance than they do today.
Yeah, it was trending upwards. And then all of a sudden we hit March and we started to see the trend downwards starting in May. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And, to compare this, you take a look at some other questions we ask about confidence in marketing the crop, and then the outlook on those grain markets. We've seen that one bounce around a lot. The confidence in marketing started off pretty positive, but it's dipped into pretty deep negative territory. And the outlook on selling crops started really, really high in September of 22, went way down, and then pretty much leapfrogged all the way up to 138. It was the highest index number that we had on any of the questions that we had, and that would have been in July. And now we've seen the trend downwards on that one into negative territory. So I think that there's a lot of concern with respect to the uncertainty and volatility of those grain markets.
Great stuff. We've posted a video at RealAgriculture.com for people to see our full analysis of these high-level results. And every week, Justin, we're going to be having these kinds of conversations to talk about some of these results with a little bit deeper thoughts, looking at how age matters, how farm size matters, and things like that. Really looking forward to it. Hey, man, have yourself a great day.
You too. Thanks, Shaun.
If you have any more questions, you can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or, of course, go to RealAgristudies.com. Okay, when we come back on RealAg Radio, we're going to catch up with Lance Zimmerman. He is the head beef analyst at Rabobank, and he'll join us right after this.
If you have a growing list of questions about getting more from your fields, know that Koch Agronomic Services has an answer for every acre. With a full spectrum of nutrient management, nutrient protection, and seed enhancement options, Koch Agronomic Services offers a deep portfolio of agronomically effective products. Each designed to enhance yield potential, all available to help solve your problems. Find the answer that's right for your acres. Start by visiting kochag.ca. That's KOCH ag.ca.
FP Genetics relentlessly brings innovative new seed genetics to Canadian farms, ensuring growers, breeders, and farmers are supported and viable. Being a valued partner on your farm for decades, you can expect the continuous pursuit of the best genetics. Visit fpgenetics.ca to discover FP's strong portfolio of wheat, durum, barley, oats, peas, and rye, or contact your local FP seed dealer or territory manager to discuss your certified seed strategy specific to your region.
You look at my travel schedule, you know one thing. It is meeting season. There is conferences happen across Canada and the United States. And one of the ones coming up here in February, next week actually, it's the 2024 Crop Connect Conference. Join the industry in Manitoba February 14th and 15th at the Victoria Inn and Convention Center in Winnipeg for insightful speakers, crop-specific information, networking, and more. Register today at cropconnectconference.ca. Time's running out for that one. You got to get registered. Joined right now by Lance Zimmerman. He is Rabobank Senior Beef Analyst. Hey, Lance, great to chat with you.
Hey, thanks for having me on this morning.
Okay, a new report out from Rabobank Research talking about rebuilding with resiliency. Is it being a necessity for the U.S. beef supply chain? Okay, so break it down for us. What exactly does this mean?
Yeah, what I'm talking about here is as you think about the U.S. beef industry, we've gone through a 25-year stretch where demand has been consistently increasing over time. At the same time, per capita supplies have been in decline. Not a lot dissimilar from a lot of what's happening in Canada right now with your producers. As that's happened, though, we've had skyrocketing prices. As those prices have reached record highs, we've really left the cattle-producing segments, cattle-producing, beef-selling, beef merchandising segments all vulnerable because the cost of making a bad decision is so much higher than it was before. You make a misstep in pricing, you make a misstep in production, it has a much stronger multiplicative effect because of the flat dollar prices that we're dealing with. And so the paper focuses on what's led to some of that, what are the impacts it's having on the industry, and then offers solutions on how we can get to a better place as we go forward.
So what are some of the variables that we're trying to neutralize in order to get, close this gap and get to more of we're not going to hit perfection, but at least a better equilibrium?
Yeah, I think the three things I focus on in the paper first are just volatile market prices. That's not lost on anyone, I think, in the marketplace right now. But if you just look at even the April live cattle futures contract, it rallied for 11 months from its October 2022 start till last fall's highs in September. Then, in less than 3 months, it wiped away all of those gains. That was the equivalent of a $500 a head decline in fed cattle value, and then even on the feeder cattle side, it was a $300 head decline as it deteriorated too. Totally wrecked the profit opportunities that the futures market had been putting into the market for this upcoming spring period when we typically make our seasonal highs. On the other side, drought. And I think, again, your producers have experienced just as much drought as a lot of these U.S. producers have. It's raised an incredible amount of havoc. We've been through multiple now boom and bust cycles with these droughts and then wet periods and then drought again. It makes it hard to invest in a cow herd rebuild, makes it hard to invest in infrastructure.
Isn't one of the challenges, though, that you've got stockers, you've got finishing yards, you've got the packer, you've got the retailer. It's impossible for them all to make money. Or it can happen, but it seems to be kind of rare. So trying to please all of those stakeholders in a resilient, so to speak, beef value chain, it's pretty difficult.
It is difficult. And I think one of the things that we all respect, and this is not unique to the U.S., I think it's very an identifying factor in the cattle industry throughout North America, whether it's Mexico, U.S., or Canada, is we pride ourselves on our foundation being that independent cattleman. The independent cattlemen and women are unique in agriculture, especially among the animal protein segments, and we're not going to lose that identity. At the same time, though, one of the solutions I speak to in the paper is we need to lean more into vertical coordination, where each segment can maintain their independence, kind of as you allude to, but that we all share in the successes and failures that occur along the way. And when I say failures, I mean maybe successes and challenges that occur along the way. That as cow-calf producers are fighting drought, the other segments can help prop them up, and vice versa. When we're in a period where maybe demand's a little bit softer, again, the other supply segments can help prop the end user segments up.
Maybe hit on that vertical coordination as you put a little bit more, because when you said that, I right away thought of poultry and pork, a lot more vertically integrated than the beef value chain. Not a good time right now for pork producers. So what's the difference between what is happening in the pork business from a vertical integration standpoint versus what you're talking about for cattle?
Great question. When we talk about vertical integration, that's ownership throughout the segment from top to bottom. Vertical coordination is a system where each segment still maintains their own independence from the others. There's no shared ownership from, let's say, the feed yard down to the cow-calf, or the packer down to the feed yard, or even the retailer down to the packer or feed yard. In this system, everybody maintains their independence, does what they do best, but they do it in mind of what the other supply segments are doing around them. Let's talk about the feed yard, for example, because we can talk both ways. The feed yard will have great discussions with the packer, who will know exactly, very intimately, what the end user is wanting from a product quality standpoint, so that packer can communicate that down in the form of good, value-based grid pricing, premiums and discounts based on what they want, what they don't want in that product. And then the feed yard can take that same grid and communicate that down to his calf suppliers, the stockers, the growers, the backgrounders, the calf ranches, and communicate to them, this is the type of animal we want, this is the management we need you to have, and the documentation that needs to come with it.
Yeah. Now, in the paper, you suggest the consumer incentivizing the cow-calf producer. What exactly does that look like?
Yeah, this isn't lost on anyone. All the dollars that we get to have, that we share among all the beef industry participants, come from the consumer. And so what I talked through in that paper is the idea that we know cattle and beef prices need to move higher to lead to the next rebuilding effort. And so what I focused on there was answering the question that we all have here at convention this week: how high can beef and cattle prices really go? And I looked at it in a little bit of a unique way. I said, hey, what we need to focus on is that middle-income consumer, because those who have a lot of money, beef prices are immaterial to them. They're going to buy beef because they love it. They're the evangelists. They're the ambassadors. We don't need to worry about them and price sensitivity. We need to worry about price sensitivity with those median household income earners. And I looked at how many minutes does a median household income have to allocate to buy a pound of choice beef or buy just ground beef. And what I looked at was we actually peaked that out during the prior cycle highs back in 14 and 15 here in the U.S. It was about 14 minutes to work for a pound of choice beef, 10 minutes to work for a pound of ground beef. And the good news is we're below that threshold today. So I just said, what would it take if we have very suboptimal income growth the next several years? Because this expansion's not here yet. It's coming over the next several years. And what happens if we hit that high of labor at 14 minutes and 10 minutes for those two price points or quality points? And it said, we still have upside potential. We have a consumer that can pay more for beef yet to fund that next expansion.
We are sort of at a sink when it comes to, this beef supply that's out there because of droughts being a big part of that, like you did mention, and trying to get people to retain more females. What the industry's been doing is just adding more pounds onto each animal. Long term, is that sustainable based on the amount of growth we're seeing in the demand for beef?
I think as we look at the question of can carcass weights keep going up, right? We're caught in this tension that I think is slowly starting to manifest itself because of drought. Bigger carcass weights are a benefit to the feed yard and the packer. They're most profitable when they can get those carcass weights maximized over in general. From the cow-calf perspective, it's suboptimal because in order to get those bigger carcass weights, you also have a bigger mama cow. Yeah. And studies have shown with each extra 100 pounds of mature cow weight, you add about 10% to her maintenance energy requirements. And so what we've done is we've pursued bigger and bigger cattle, bigger and bigger weights. We've created bigger mama cows. And yet, when you talk to operations, a lot of times we don't even recognize how much bigger these cows have gotten. And we've also not adjusted our stocking rate to reflect those maintenance energy requirements. Right. So we have a cow that she may be 300 pounds bigger than the cows that were on that same operation 3 or 4 generations before her. Yet we're still running, maybe it's 100 head back then, it's still 100 head today. And so we've created some real resiliency challenges with the drought and our ability to carry cattle and manage through these drought conditions because of that.
Yeah. So what's your outlook for 2024 for the cow-calf producer?
Yeah, the second half of last year really really was a discouraging moment, especially as we went through that fourth quarter period and those all-time highs broke down here in the U.S. As we look, and I know some of your Canada producers are facing some real challenges right now with some big discounts in the cash market relative to futures with some of the supply buildup that they've been facing as well. But as we look ahead, I do think that the tighter supplies that we're seeing throughout the U.S. and even Canada are going to continue to be a supporting factor to this market. Doesn't mean we're not going to have short-term challenges like we both have to work through in each country right now. We're going to charge higher into these spring highs, and then I think we'll have a normal seasonal summer low before we put in probably a fourth quarter high for the whole calendar year.
From an overall profitability standpoint, also comment on what you see for the feed yard. Obviously, always working on the margin.
Yeah, always on the margin. Feedlot profitability, it's going to be a struggle through the first half of this year. A lot of feed yards that had good risk management in place, they may have enough price protection in some of those cattle with the good risk management strategy that they'll be fine. For those cattle that are on a cash-to-cash basis, it's going to be a tough sledding period here probably through the heart of the second quarter. As we go through the summer, we'll see maybe an opportunity to get some profit back in those cattle with some cheaper feeder buys that they've been able to have over the last several months. And as we get to the fourth quarter, we'll see how everything plays out. We still got to get those cattle on feed. But I think for the feed yard segment in general, steady to maybe a little bit of profit. Not as good as last year. Last year was probably some historically strong profits that it'll be hard to match again this year. But I think we'll have to hand more profitability back to the stocker operator, the backgrounder, and the cow-calf guy this year.
Yeah. Overall, the beef producers looking a lot better or feeling better about the profitability outlook than, say, dairy or pork.
Absolutely. And I would say even maybe poultry in that. And so, yes, I think overall, there's reason to be cautiously optimistic about this year if you're a feed yard operator. First half of the year, you're going to have some struggles that you're going to have to manage through. Second half of the year can look a lot better. If you're a cow-calf guy, if you're a stocker operator, you feel like you're in the driver's seat. You just need Mother Nature to throw you a few graces here and there.
Well, hey, Lance, really appreciate you joining us. Enjoy Cattle Convention 2024 and this nice weather in Florida.
I appreciate it. You as well.
That was Lance Zimmerman of Rabobank. Yeah, I think if thinking of the Manitoba beef producers I'll be talking to on Thursday, what Lance said there is 2024 is the year where the feed yard's got to give some of that margin over to the backgrounder stocker operator and the cow-calf operator. Cow-calf industry needs some, not just one turn. Okay, not just 1 year of, hey, calf prices are really good this year. Boy, see what you get for those yearlings? What we really need is some sustained positive margin, some good weather, right? Not just, hey, we had some grass for this year. We need a pattern here, because if we have pricing signals and we have weather signals, there's the demand and the signals, the market signals are there for people to start retaining more heifers. But for that to happen, just because you want to doesn't mean you can, because of some of these other variables, mainly Mother Nature, right? So, yeah, it's there was a lot of talk at Cattle Convention about basically the size of the cow herd in the U.S. and as well in Canada. And the same barriers persist and are there. We can overcome them, but we need some help, mainly from Mother Nature, that sweet lady who's going to fix it all for this year, right? We got all of our Cattle Con Convention brought to you by Alltech. You can find it all at RealAgriculture.com. Make sure you go to RealAgriculture.com/subscribe, and you make sure you get our cattle email that goes out on Monday mornings as well. FP Genetics, innovative seed genetics for Canadian farmers. Contact your local FP seed dealer or territory manager to discuss your certified seed strategy specific to your region. Visit fpgenetics.ca to learn more. When we come back on RealAg Radio, we've got the top ag news stories of the day.
CDC Endure is a new oat line from Alliance Seed. High yielding with excellent disease resistance and the quality end users ask for, all in one great oat variety. CDC Endure provides the high beta-glucan levels to make heart-healthy products like breakfast cereals. For more information on CDC Endure oats, as well as any other products from Alliance Seed, check out allianceseed.com or visit any Alliance Seed authorized retailers.
What's next for your fields? At Pioneer, delivering industry-leading genetics drives everything we do. From the scientists in the lab to our local teams with boots on the ground, we are determined to get there first. Developing top-performing products, proven in more growing conditions than ever before. Pioneer. What's next happens here. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more.
It's now time for the top ag news stories of the day. Get back to the basics with the Sask Soil Health Conference happening February 14th and 13th at Prairieland Park in Saskatoon. Learn from knowledgeable speakers, take in a producer panel, and network with your peers in this informative two-day event. Learn more at sasksoil.ca/soil health conference. Okay, let's dig in here on the top ag news stories of the day. Lots happening in this week, even at the midpoint. Want to make a note, and I know from time to time he listened to this show because he would send me an email, but the passing of Bill Northey. He died at the age of 64. Northey served as Iowa's Secretary of Agriculture for 11 years before joining the Trump administration as Undersecretary for Farm Production and Conservation. The news of Northey's passing was confirmed by his colleagues at the Agribusiness Association of Iowa. Northey was first elected Secretary of Agriculture in Iowa in 2006. He won re-election in 2010 and in 2014, but left office in 2017 to join the USDA in Washington, D.C. Northey farmed with his family near Spirit Lake in the northwest corner of Iowa. Northey's father, Wayne Northey, who was 90, died this past December. So that is definitely somebody that, Bill Northey, somebody that everybody knew very, very well in agriculture, and always appreciated his emails and commentary and thought-provoking opinions on some of the things that we were talking about. When it comes to interest rates, a lot of people waiting for them to come down. We've been getting comments from the Federal Reserve as well as the Bank of Canada. The Canadian dollar strengthened against the U.S. counterpart on Tuesday as oil prices rose, and the Bank of Canada signaled little urgency to cut interest rates, with the currency rebounding from a near two-month low. The loonie was trading 0.4% higher at $134.90 to the greenback, or 74.13 U.S. cents. I prefer the 74.13 U.S. cents conversion. I can make sense of that. After earlier touching its weakest intraday level since December 13th at 135.44. Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklin said more time was needed for monetary policy to ease price pressures, adding that the biggest driver of inflation were shelter costs, could not be tamed by borrowing costs. He made the remarks in the first speech he has given since the bank held rates on January 24th. Meanwhile, south of the border, Fed speakers are emphasizing the need for further data to confirm the trajectory of inflation before deciding on interest rate cuts. They are concerned about potential inflation risks and closely monitoring economic trends. So, and one of the things I read as well today in the Globe and Mail is that a majority of analysts are expecting the Bank of Canada to now cut in April. But that's been pushed back. So I don't know if that's a foregone conclusion. Other opinions out there is that the Bank of Canada is going to wait till the Federal Reserve makes its first move on rates. You know, some of the people were expecting that the U.S. could be cutting as much as 6 times in 2024. Man, it feels like 3 is a lot at this point, but we're following it obviously very, very closely. Concerning. Okay, this is concerning because Canadian agriculture needs temporary foreign workers. I thought we had kind of established that. Well, story in Bloomberg, Canada's immigration minister is taking steps to curb the country's dependence on temporary foreign labor and international students, prompting pushback from business groups that say there just aren't enough domestic workers available to sustain parts of the economy. Mark Miller introduced a limit on foreign student visas last month, cutting them from 35% for this year. He will announce further changes soon to restrict students' off-campus work hours, and he's also reviewing the country's temporary foreign worker program, according to the story in Bloomberg. Now, quote here from Miller, who says, "We have gotten addicted to temporary foreign workers. Any large industry trying to make ends meet will look at the ability to drive down wages. There is an incentive to drive labor costs down. It's something that will require a larger discussion." The minister is wrestling with a surge of foreign students and temporary foreign workers that have helped drive up housing costs. This is the agricultural industry is going to have to work here. All of these things are not created the same. At the same time, what Minister Miller is missing is Canadians are also concerned about food costs. And so when you look at the fruit and vegetable industry, you look at the mushroom industry, other areas of horticulture, temporary foreign workers are important. They're important in agriculture. And so, boy, I don't know if we're talking carve-outs, exemptions, or whatever kind of policy he's dreaming up here. There is going to be a lot of pushback from agriculture for sure. An Israeli-based company that's looking to revolutionize the dairy market says it's the first producer of animal-identical protein to receive a no-objection letter from Health Canada. ReMilk produces so it's called ReMilk, the main whey protein in milk without any cows through a fermentation process that involves genetically modification of microbes. The company says it can produce milk, ice cream, yogurt, cream cheese, and more at scale with the same texture and taste as traditional dairy. Beef packer margins sharply negative. Cash cattle prices rose for a third straight week and have gained $4.33 during the span. Wholesale beef prices trimmed 40 cents for choice and 30 cents for select on Monday. But over the past 2 weeks, wholesale beef prices have weakened with choice down $8.18. That has dropped packer cutting margins deeper into the red, which may limit their pursuit of cash cattle as they try to manage supplies after a couple of weeks of strong purchases. Yeah, a lot of talk last week at CattleCon. Negative margins for the packer, negative margins for the feed yard here right now. Democrats object to IRA funding for industrial agricultural practices. And I was tweeting about this on the weekend because I take some issue with some of this. But a group of Democratic members from both the House and the Senate have expressed criticism regarding the inclusion of certain practices eligible for funding under the Inflation Reduction Act within the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. They argue that these practices support what they refer to as industrial animal agriculture practices. Specifically, the lawmakers are concerned about practices such as funding for waste storage facilities, roofs and covers for biogas capture facilities, feed management for livestock, and water separation facilities. They believe that these practices will primarily benefit large industrial concentrated animal feeding operations and do not effectively address the environmental impacts associated with such facilities. In response to their concerns, the lawmakers led by Senator Cory Booker and Representative Alma Adams have requested a briefing from the USDA's National Resources Conservation Service to discuss the issue further. This idea that large operations cannot be environmentally friendly and shouldn't be able to access this kind of funding and only small farms should, I don't get that. That to me is just political blah, 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 blah. Okay? It's like I read an article on the weekend that was pushing back against farms using biogas facilities because it just supported industrial agriculture. We're just kind of picking and choosing, right? Either it's about being more environmentally friendly or it's not. Either you're trying to reduce emissions or you're not. And size, quite frankly, I don't know where it fits into that conversation. And some of these large operations that Senator Booker is talking about have a way higher level because they're probably, in some cases they're newer. If you look at some of these new large feed yards, for example, and the way that they manage waste and runoff and animal care, you can't tell me that is not better or more by today's book of how it should be done than a 500 head yard that was built in 1950. And I'm not pushing back on the feed yard from 1950. Hey, that's their operation. They got to operate too. But this simplification of just like big versus small, I think is so divisive. It's just it's typical Senator Booker. If you have any feedback on today's show, you can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also call us on the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio, and we'll chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this episode of the RealAg Radio podcast, brought to you by Authority 480 herbicide from FMC. Authority 480 herbicide delivers outstanding control of the toughest broadleaf weeds in wheat, pulse crops, flax, mustard, and more. See your local retailer today for more information.